Welcome to Overfitted. I'm your host, ready to dive deep into the world of tech and development.
And I'm here to explore the fascinating intersections of AI and coding with you. We're really thrilled you could join us for this in-depth look at something pretty transformative.
Today on Overfitted, our focus is really sharp. Mastering the art of prompting for these incredible AI coding assistants.
Right, what some people are calling vibe coding tools, things like Claude Code, Rue Code.
Exactly. We're going to unpack how smart targeted prompts can, dramatically enhance the output you get.
And help manage costs, too, which is always important.
Definitely. And ultimately just lead to significantly better coding results overall.
Yeah, in a world where AI's role in development is just constantly expanding, understanding this stuff is kind of your express lane to staying ahead of the curve.
Okay, so let's talk about this vibe coding. It sounds maybe a bit informal, but it really does capture the essence of using these AI assistants as, collaborators.
Like a pair programmer, yeah, but maybe on steroids. It's all about accelerating how we build software.
And our sources point to some key players here: Cursor, Windsurf, Klein, and RuCode.
That's right. And it's actually useful to understand a key difference there.
Oh,
Well, tools like Cursor and Windsurf, they're generally seen as AI-first IDEs. So integrated development environments where AI is really baked in from the start.
okay, foundational.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas Klein and RuCode, they tend to function more as IDE extensions. They plug into environments you might already use, like VS Code.
Right, so they add AI capabilities on top.
Yeah, so extensions add AI as a layer, while the AI-first IDEs have it embedded more deeply. It can lead to, maybe more seamless integration or just different core features,
It really is amazing how quickly these tools have evolved, though.
isn't it?
It feels like just yesterday they were like glorified autocomplete.
Yeah.
And now they're tackling complex code restructuring, understanding entire projects.
And even executing commands in your terminal is a pretty significant leap.
Huge leap.
Absolutely. And, as our sources highlight, there's a bit of a philosophical split almost in how these tools approach that developer-AI partnership.
How so?
Well, you've got tools like Cursor, which really prioritize speed, immediate code suggestions, keeping that coding momentum going. Think immediacy first.
Immediacy for, okay, I get that. Quick answers.
Right. And then there are tools like Keyline, which seem to emphasize a more thoughtful, collaborative approach.
Okay.
Almost like having a senior dev walk you through potential solutions, really explaining the why and the context behind the suggestions.
Yeah.
More back and forth.
Right, more of a discussion. Okay, so let's get into the specifics of better prompting then, starting with code refactoring.
Good place to start.
Yeah. For anyone who's maybe not super familiar, code refactoring is essentially giving your existing code a really good cleanup, reorganizing it.
Improving the internal structure and readability, yeah. But crucially, without altering what it actually does, the external behavior stays the same.
Right. And the goal, as our built-in sorts emphasizes, is, making the code easier to maintain later on, more adaptable, maybe more efficient, too.
Precisely. And the emergence of these powerful generative AI tools like ChatGPT has made refactoring way more accessible.
If you know how to ask the right questions, I suppose.
Exactly. That's the key, guiding the AI effectively with your prompts.
Okay, so what are some general refactoring prompts that would work across most of these vibe coding tools? Built-in had a really good list.
Yeah, they did.
For instance, you could start by just asking the AI about relevant design patterns or maybe general coding principles you should keep in mind for a specific bit of code you're working on.
That's a fantastic first step, yeah. It helps the AI understand the bigger picture, the architectural context.
So it suggests improvements that align with best practices.
Exactly. Or you could get more specific. Ask it to refactor a piece of code to explicitly follow a certain pattern, like the factory pattern in Java. You just give it the code and the prompt.
And the factory pattern, just quickly, that's about creating objects without specifying the exact class up front, right?
Oh, got it. It decouples the creation logic.
Okay. Another common thing we all run into is, code redundancy, duplication.
Oh, yeah. The bane of many code bases.
So you could ask the AI, how do I refactor this to get rid of duplication? Or what are some general strategies for finding and removing duplicated code across a bigger project?
Absolutely. And you can get pretty granular, too. Ask for a refactor of just one function or module, maybe in C#, Python, JavaScript,
Yeah.
whatever you're using.
And you mentioned asking it to make code more idiomatic. What does that really mean?
It basically means writing the code in a way that feels natural for that specific language, following its common conventions and best practices, like the way a seasoned Python developer would write Python.
Makes sense, using the language's strengths.
Precisely.
Performance is always a concern too, right? As developers, we're always thinking about speed. So you could prompt the AI, like, how can I refactor this Python script to run faster? Or just ask generally for performance tweaks on a code snippet.
Definitely. And readability is another huge one. How can you make that dense JavaScript function easier for someone else or your future self to understand?
Future me always appreciates readable code.
Huh, doesn't everyone?
Yeah.
And crucially, security. Always think about security.
Right, so you can ask the AI how to refactor to implement better security practices.
Yeah, and you can even mention specific things you're worried about, like input validation to stop unexpected data causing problems.
Or output encoding to prevent things like code injection.
Exactly. Or checking authentication mechanisms. You could even ask it to suggest a more object-oriented structure for some procedural code, maybe to improve organization.
That's a really solid set of general prompts, but built-in also broke them down into more specific categories, didn't they?
They did, yeah, which is helpful for targeting specific kinds of improvements.
Let's start with their design pattern prompts. So it's not just asking if there are relevant patterns, but prompting for specific techniques to, like, improve code reuse and actively apply those patterns.
Right, you're pushing the AI to think more architecturally. Then there were duplication prompts, which we've touched on, really focusing on finding and killing that redundant code.
Okay, and under general prompts, you could even ask the AI to recommend specific tools or IDE plugins that might help with refactoring,
Yeah.
kind of leveraging its knowledge of the ecosystem.
Yeah, that's a neat idea. Also asking about common code smells.
Code smells.
Yeah, those little indicators in your code that often suggest something could be improved, that maybe a refactor is needed. Asking the AI to spot those can be super valuable.
Like hints that the structure isn't quite right.
Exactly. And if you're dealing with, say, legacy code full of global variables,
Like mere fuel.
you can ask the AI for strategies to reduce them, improve encapsulation, isolate things better.
Prevent those weird side effects.
Right. And definitely ask about common pitfalls to avoid during the refactoring itself. Don't want to make things worse.
Good point. And for those older systems, maybe inherited code bases, there are specific prompting techniques for refactoring legacy code, which can be, well, intimidating.
Very much so. Plus, if you're working in a team, you can ask the AI for advice on keeping things consistent.
Sure.
Coding style, quality, especially during a big refactor with lots of people involved.
Collaboration is key. Maintaining that consistency is vital, right?
Absolutely, especially with multiple developers touching the code.
Okay, now let's talk about prompts focused specifically on improving the code. We mentioned asking for more idiomatic code.
Right, or asking it to use more modern language features, like use arrow functions in JavaScript for cleaner syntax.
And testability. That's crucial. Can you prompt for ways to make code easier to unit test?
Definitely. Ask for techniques to refactor for better testability. And also, ask about safe refactoring practices. You want to minimize the risk of introducing new bugs.
Always the fear.
Yeah. And error handling. You can ask for strategies to improve how your code handles errors and exceptions. Make it more robust.
Maybe even improve error reporting or debugging capabilities.
For sure. Making it easier to figure out what went wrong when it does go wrong.
The source also mentioned code principles prompts, like asking how to boost performance and scalability through refactoring.
Yeah, or getting specific again. How do I refactor this script for better performance? And things like the single responsibility principle.
SRP. Each thing does one job.
Right. So how do you refactor a big function that's doing too much so it adheres to that principle?
Makes sense. And for more advanced OOP stuff, you could ask about refactoring to align with solid principles.
Exactly. SOLID, that acronym for 5 key principles for creating more maintainable, flexible software designs. You can ask the AI to help apply those.
And readability, which we keep coming back to, asking for ways to improve documentation.
Or simplifying those horrible nested if statements that are impossible to follow.
Ugh, yes, please. Or just general readability improvements, making code clearer, more maintainable.
Clear code saves so much time and pain down the road for everyone.
Definitely. Okay, lastly on refactoring, code security prompts, specifically targeting things like preventing XSS or SQL injection.
Yep. Focusing the AI on specific common web vulnerabilities. And code standard prompts asking for tips on making your OO code better or aligning with specific language standards or project guidelines.
Wow, that's a really comprehensive set of ideas from built-in.
It truly is. Using these specific prompts really lets you leverage the AI's knowledge to tackle very targeted improvements in a structured way.
Okay, let's switch gears now. Let's talk code generation. The prompt engineering guide had some great points on how effective LLMs are at this.
Yeah, they're surprisingly good at generating new code from scratch.
Even for something simple, like asking for Python code to get a user's name and print hello.
Absolutely. It can usually whip that up pretty quickly. And one really powerful technique is generating code directly from comments.
How does that work?
Well, you basically write comments outlining the logic you want in plain English right there in your code file. And the AI can often translate those comments into actual working code.
Wow, that sounds super handy for quickly sketching out a function or module.
It really is. Great for rapid prototyping.
But the guide had a big warning label too, right?
A very important one. Even if the generated code looks okay, you absolutely have to review it carefully.
They had that Python example, didn't they? Generated the JSON structure fine.
But completely missed the import JSON statement at the top. The code would crash.
Ouch. So always verify, always test.
Critical advice. These AIs are amazing assistants, but they're not perfect. Human oversight is still essential. Think of them as very skilled juniors, maybe. They need review.
Good analogy. Another practical technique they mentioned was asking the AI to complete a function you've started.
Or even just predict the next logical line of code based on what you've already written.
So it's like autocomplete, but smarter, with more context.
Exactly. Much deeper understanding of the surrounding code and what you're likely trying to do.
The guide also showed generating more complex stuff, like MySQL queries.
Yeah, just by giving it the database schema, the table structure, and clear instructions on what you need.
And what was really impressive was that you could even ask the AI to generate the schema and dummy data first for testing.
Right. That's a huge time saver when you're setting up and testing database stuff. Avoids all of that manual setup.
Massive. And what about understanding existing code? Can you prompt the AI to explain code you didn't write?
You can, yeah. Ask it to explain what a snippet does. The guide even noted you might be able to do this across different languages.
Oh, interesting.
Though it depends. The AI's underlying system message, its core programming, might sometimes limit how well it handles languages outside its main focus. Something to keep in mind.
Okay. Now let's move to a really critical area. Debugging.
Ah, yes.
Eh.
Everyone's favorite pastime.
Huh. Well, our Claude AI tutorial from Tutorial Support positions Claude as a pretty valuable tool here, not just finding and fixing errors.
But also explaining the problem clearly, and even suggesting improvements to stop it happening again.
This seems like where the conversational aspect really pays off.
I think so.
Yeah.
Claude can apparently detect different error types, syntax errors, the basic grammar mistakes.
Right, the ones that stop the code running at all.
Yeah. And logic errors where it runs but gives the wrong answer, and runtime errors, the ones that crash the program while it's executing.
And its process seems quite systematic.
It does. It analyzes the code first, tries to understand the intent, then it looks for common mistakes, weird patterns,
And when it finds something,
explains it simply, suggests a fix, often gives you the corrected code, and that educational bit is key, explaining why it was an error and how to avoid it in the future.
it's like getting a mini lesson with your bug fix.
Exactly. That example they gave, the Python code with the division by zero bug on an empty list,
Yeah.
Claude apparently nailed it, pinpointed the line, explained the issue clearly, and provided the fix with a check for the empty list. Really practical.
So the benefits seem pretty clear. Saves time hunting bugs, helps you learn.
Comprehensive analysis, it's always available.
24/7 debugging partner.
Pretty much. And language flexibility, too.
But there are limitations. Right. It's not magic.
Crucially, yes. As the tutorial points out, Claude can't actually run your code. It can't see how it behaves in the real world.
So it might miss subtle stuff. Complex runtime errors.
Potentially, yes. Which means you absolutely have to test any fix it suggests in your own environment. Make sure it actually works and doesn't break something else.
That makes sense. Which leads us nicely into the challenges of using AI for bigger projects. Multiple files, complex structure.
Right. That Reddit thread in our Claude AI had some really good practical insights on this. Developers hitting real-world roadblocks.
Like the AI accidentally removing features? Or just losing track of the context across many files.
Exactly. That initial vibe of just asking it to make this better can go wrong quickly on larger projects if you're not precise.
So what's the advice?
Well, one key idea from the thread was thinking of large projects as just collections of smaller projects.
Okay.
Meaning, break things down. Modularize. One file, one responsibility, ideally. Focus the AI's prompts on these smaller, specific bits of code with minimal necessary context.
Reduces the chance of unintended side effects elsewhere.
Precisely. The thread also really hammered home the risk of context loss in long chats.
Right, the AI forgets what you talked about earlier.
Yeah. So the suggestion was maybe work with only 2, 3 related files at a time and diligently, meticulously review every single change the AI suggests before you commit it.
Constant vigilance.
Pretty much. And
Yeah.
context management is definitely a big hurdle, though some tools are adding features like projects to let you upload more files for context.
Ah, okay. That helps.
And another idea was using a simple text doc outlining the project architecture and file paths. Give that to the AI for a broader overview without sending the whole code base.
Smart. I also like the idea mentioned of using two AI instances, one to write the code.
And another to check it against the documentation. Yeah, that's clever. Like an AI code review buddy system.
And that simple tip, explicitly tell it do not do any write actions if you just want analysis, prevents accidents.
Absolutely. Control is key. The thread also mentioned emerging tech like MCP, Model Context Protocol File System.
What's that?
The potential for AI to actually read files directly
Mm.
instead of us copy-pasting. That could be a game changer for context on huge projects.
Wow, okay. And there was this whole design for AI approach summarized too.
Yeah, some really solid advice there. Keep files small, maybe under 300 lines. Separate concerns rigorously. Document well. Write tests. Refactor often in small steps.
It's like thinking, how would I make this easiest for a super smart but slightly forgetful assistant to work with?
Ah, that's a good way to put it. And again, use direct, unambiguous prompts. Start a fresh chat for every significant new task.
Avoid confusing it with old context.
Right. And the technique of starting high level, maybe describing an interface, then refining the components.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Also, creating a dedicated markdown file MD describing the goal, the approach, any requirements, giving that to the AI first.
Yeah, providing that structured overview can really help focus the AI's output. And when editing, be super specific about the exact changes needed. Sometimes maybe even ask for the whole revised file back just to be sure nothing got lost.
These are all really practical tips for keeping control when things get complex.
Definitely. It's about guiding the AI effectively, especially on bigger, trickier projects.
Okay, so we've covered a lot on prompting specifics. Let's zoom out a bit. What are the overall best practices for using these vibe coding tools day to day?
Well, our LLM Watch source really emphasizes using them carefully, integrating them thoughtfully with solid existing engineering practices.
So it's not a license to get sloppy.
Absolutely not. And the limitations of AI Coding Assistant source brings up the AI's comprehension gap.
Meaning?
Meaning, while they're sophisticated, they still have a limited grasp of the broader context, abstract concepts, and especially that tacit knowledge the unwritten stuff experienced devs just know.
Right. So they might generate code fast, but struggle with nuance, like complex logic, edge cases, really tricky algorithms.
Exactly. It's a powerful tool to augment human expertise, but it's not a replacement for deep thinking and experience.
Makes sense. And that limitation source also talked about integration and collaboration issues.
Yeah, fitting these tools into existing team workflows, CI/CD pipelines, Git communication platforms, it needs to be seamless.
Teamwork is still crucial then.
Totally. The source stressed clear communication protocols, agile methods, knowledge sharing like code reviews, using collaborative platforms effectively, and defining roles clearly even with AI in the mix.
So AI doesn't replace good team practices.
If anything, it makes them even more important. Ensuring compatibility with the existing tools and sticking to coding standards is also key for smooth integration.
Okay. Now let's dive into some really advanced stuff, specifically for Rue code, based on that detailed Reddit thread. This multi-agent framework idea sounds fascinating.
It really is. The concept is having specialized AI agents, each with a role, like an orchestrator managing tasks.
A research agent gathering info, a code agent actually writing.
Exactly, like a mini AI dev team inside your IDE.
Wow.
And the thread stressed optimizing token usage. Tokens are like the basic units the AI processes,
Right.
and they have limits and costs.
Right, so how do they optimize?
They talked about progressive loading patterns for context. Start with essentials, add supporting details, then extended context only if needed. Very efficient.
Keeping the context lean.
Yeah. And having a context window management protocol to stay within limits. Also, a cognitive process selection matrix.
Sounds complex.
It's basically a way to choose the best AI agent or process for the type of task analysis, planning, implementation, etc. Structured thinking.
Okay. And task decomposition trees, breaking down big tasks.
Into smaller subtasks for different agents.
Hmm.
And this sophisticated memory layering system. Working memory for the current task, project memory, reference memory, even meta memory about its own reasoning.
That sounds incredibly advanced, managing information across the whole project scope.
It is. Plus standardized communication protocols so these agents can talk to each other effectively. And things like setup automation and custom rules engines for more control and efficiency.
So does this framework actually work well in practice, according to the thread?
Apparently, yes. Users reported efficient task completion, smooth switching between different AI modes. It sounds promising?
And it's still evolving. They mentioned persistent memory, automated mode selection.
Exactly. It suggests these frameworks are developing rapidly. It's clear from that discussion. It's a very collaborative, community-driven effort, too. People experimenting, sharing insights, pushing the boundary.
What a really dynamic space.
Absolutely. Exciting times for AI coding assistants.
So as we start to wrap up this deep dive, what are the main takeaways you'd want listeners to remember about prompting these tools, especially Claude and Rucode?
Okay, well, first, clarity and specificity are king. Be precise. Be unambiguous about what you need. The better you articulate, the better the AI's response.
Makes sense. Clear instructions get clear results.
Second, context management is crucial, especially for bigger projects. Bring things down, focus prompts, use project features or context protocols if available.
Don't overwhelm the AI, basically.
Right. Third, understand the capabilities and the limitations. These are powerful assistants, amazing tools, but they aren't replacements for human expertise, deep logic, or understanding the big picture. Critical thinking is still essential.
Augmentation, not replacement.
Exactly. And finally, don't be afraid to experiment. Try different prompting styles. Explore the advanced features like specialized agents or memory systems and tools like Rucode. See what works best for your workflow.
Good advice. Combine smart prompting with solid engineering principles and that critical eye.
Precisely. That's how you unlock the real potential here.
All right. And here's a final thought for you, our listeners, to ponder. As these prompting techniques get better and the AI tools themselves become even more capable, how is this ongoing evolution going to further blur the lines between what humans contribute and what AI contributes to software development?
It's a fascinating question, isn't it? The landscape is changing so fast.
It really is. We encourage you to keep exploring these tools, maybe share your own insights as things develop. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of AI-powered coding.